Hey, what is up guys? Gonna be taking a look at a new archetype, the Shadolls, coming out in Duelist Advent, which is set to release after Primal Origins. Now, not everything is released for them right now. They're supposed to be a light and dark attribute archetype, but they have a lot of potential just right now with what we have to check out. So let's go ahead and check out some of the boss monsters first. Then we're gonna go ahead and check out the regular monsters, and then we're gonna check out their support and other cards that can work well with the deck. Basically, their playstyle can kind of be stun, and they all have flip effects, and they have other effects when they're sent to the graveyard by card effects. So kind of like an aspect of Dark Worlds, where once you get rid of them with card effects, you'll get some type of effect. But they also work when they're sent from the deck to the graveyard, and they got a lot of dirty tricks up their sleeves. So let's go ahead and check out the first boss monster, El Shadow Nephilim. So this one requires a shadow monster and a light monster, and it must be fusion summoned. If this card is special summoned, you can send one shadow card from your deck to the graveyard, which we'll get into later of why this is good. And at the start of damage step, if this card battles a special summon monster, destroy that monster. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one shadow spell or trap card in your graveyard and add it to your hand. The next boss monster, which is really what made me want to play this deck. Unfortunately, it's not out on DevPro yet, but once it comes out, I will do a bunch of gameplay for you guys. So anyways, Shuttle Midrash it's amazing. So anyways, it must first be fusion summoned, and it can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Neither player can special summon more than once per turn. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one shadow spell or trap card in your graveyard and add that to your hand. So that's really good. There's where its stun aspect comes into play. You can't destroy it by, you can't destroy it by card effects, and your opponent can't special summon more than once per turn. So many cards in this game, like Beals, the king of diabolic dragons. That's such a good card, but every time that card comes out, I swear, 101 is just waiting around the corner, and that's really good because some decks, it's very difficult to just make a 101 unless they can special summon more than, twice. And what that will make your opponent do is they have to, play Call of the Haunted, they have to end phase Call of the Haunted, or they have to be able to get out, a monster in your turn, and that's where I really feel like this deck has a lot of potential. Also, just as a random side note, a lot of these cards are actually corrupted or puppet versions of actual other cards. Like this one is over here is using Winda from the, was it Gustos, I think is what she's from, but yeah, there's a lot of other cards that are actually from other archetypes and stuff. But this one I believe is a Gusto Goldos or something like that. But anyways, they all have two effects. So now we're jumping into the regular monsters that they have, and they all have two effects. They have flip effects, and they also have another effect where they are sent from the deck to the graveyard by a card effect. So what that will mean is cards like Dark World Dealings will actually work with it, which is actually pretty cool. So they have some utility with some of the older cards, which is always awesome to see. But anyways, Shadow Falcon has the flip effect that you can target one shadow monster in your graveyard, except for himself, and you can just special summon that target in face down defense position. Now, just to save some time in the video, I'm not going to mention that you can only use the effect of Shadow Falcon's effect once per turn, and only once that turn, because all of them pretty much have that effect. But for the most part, his flip effect is that you can special summon a Shadow monster in face down defense position, and his other effect is if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon this card from the graveyard in face down defense position, and yeah, it obviously has that effect where you can only use it once per turn. Next up we have a Shadow Beast, which is actually supposed to be Naturia Beast. That's a pretty awkward looking Naturia Beast, but anyways, he's got a flip effect that you can draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card. If this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can draw 1 card. So at first I was like, man, this card's amazing. The only downside really to this card is it's level 5, but there's other cards you can use to just dump this card into the graveyard. And obviously if you have multiple Shadow Beasts, you can just cycle it by just getting rid of Shadow Beast by just discarding, Shadow Beast with Shadow Beast's effect. But he's got decent attack too, but really where he's good is being able to cycle cards. There's so many decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where just having cards in the graveyard will just help you, whether you're discarding cards like Breakthrough Skill, or maybe you could make some crazy Shadow Fabled deck where you can discard some of the Fabled and special summon them and have some fun with that. Next up we have a Shadow Hedgehog, which is actually a Neo Flamvel card. But anyways, his full effect is you can add 1 Shadow Spell or Trap from your deck to your hand, and if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add 1 Shadow Monster. So he's basically the searcher of the deck. Next up we have Shuttle Dragon, and his effect from a flip effect is you can target 1 card your opponent controls and return that target to the hand. So I think that's really good. Being able to get rid of all XYZs, all Synchro monsters, that's a really good effect. And he also has 1900 attack, so he's kind of like the go-to card just to run over certain things that you need to get rid of. And then if you sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can target one spell or trap card on the field, and you get to destroy that target. Next up, we have Shadow Lizard. So his flip effect is you can target one monster on the field and destroy that target. And if it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can send one Shadow card from your deck to the graveyard, except for another copy of himself. So this card opens up a lot of potentials to pluses, and it also kind of speeds up the deck, is what I was trying to say. Getting tongue-tied over here, but yeah, I really feel like this card is pretty good just to, you know, obviously cycle through cards. It's pretty self-explanatory. Now we're jumping into the support for the Shadolls. So this card is absolutely crazy. Anyways, this card is actually supposed to be a corrupted Gem Knight fusion. This card is a normal spell card, and it says you can only activate one Shadow Fusion per turn. Fusion summon one Shadow Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as fusion materials. If your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, you can use monsters from your main deck as fusion material. So that's where I'm like, okay, this archetype is good. This is one of their most insane cards, and I feel like that's crazy. Oh, it's cool. Let me just, you know, fusion summon from my main deck. Like what's the downside? Oh, the downside is you can only use one of them per turn. But like, is that even really relevant when you can bust out this guy over here where I attack and I get to you know, just destroyed? Like, and if this card's special summon, I can just send a Shadow and then go plus even more. So I really feel like this card is absolutely crazy in that aspect. I mean, what you know. There's very few decks in the game that I would say that aren't very meta where they don't special summon monsters from the extra deck. And I think that this card is just crazy. It's just way too good. Next up we have Cursed Shadow's Snare, which is actually a really good field spell for them. But anyways, each time a Shadow monster is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, place one spellstone counter on this card for each of those monsters. During your opponent's turn, only all monsters they control lose 100.5 for each spellstone counter on this card. If you would fusion summon a Shadow fusion monster, you can move 3 spellstone counters from this card to use one face-up monster your opponent controls as fusion material. And that's crazy, because this like is a lingering effect, and obviously if you get, you know, this card out, you can go ahead and send more Shadows to the graveyard. So that's really where I feel like this deck's looking pretty good. I know it requires 3 of them, but this is a continuous. It's not like, you know, you remove 3 counters and then this card goes away. This card is out there for a while, so we'll have to see how insane this gets, or you know, what other things can combo with this. Because I feel with this card over here, we get to use things from the main deck. I don't know, maybe someone will make a Fusion Gate Shadow deck and they can figure out some way to loop it. I know you can only use this once per turn, but there's always people that figure out loops to break the game. Next up, we have one of their support trap cards that's a trap monster. Now, one thing just I want to mention real quick, with trap monsters, even though it's level 9, what's cool with trap monsters is you can use them as XYZ. Now, you cannot use tokens as XYZ material. You can use them to synchro up with. The trap monsters, you can synchro with them, you can XYZ with them, so, you know, there's that. But anyways, it's got some awkward attack. It's 1950 attack and then 1950 defense. And this card's effect that it can be substituted for any attribute fusion material monster listed on a Shadow fusion monster, and if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target one Shadow spell or trap card in your graveyard except for itself and add that target to your hand. So I really feel like with Shadow Fusion, this is the main reason why I feel like this deck has so much potential. This card, Fusion from the main deck. I mean, I've already mentioned it twice, but like that's crazy. Like you just keeps on coming out with like crazier and crazier cards every day. But now let's go ahead and talk about other support cards that aren't actually Shadow cards, but they actually work with the deck. So first off, pretty self-explanatory, Armageddon Knight, really good card. The main reason why I like Armageddon Knight is it's able to send the Shadow Beast because it's level 5. Now, unfortunately, Mathematician has that restriction where it's 4 or lower, but Mathematician pretty good. It sends one card to the graveyard, and you get that potential to draw a card when it's destroyed by battle. So that's pretty good in that aspect. And unfortunately, Mathematician is not going to be dark, so, you know, unfortunately, not more darks for dark arm, but I really feel like the Shadow archetype has a lot of potential, like I mentioned before. Who knows, maybe someone will play Dark Creator in the deck. It seems like you can dump Darks really fast, and maybe someone will play some Chaos variant of them, because it doesn't seem like you would need to banish any of the cards. They just sit there in the graveyard, and you can really utilize that. But Mathematician, obviously, much better. Other than setting Shadow Beast, I mean, they're all basically under 4 as of right now. We might get other support in the future. Like I said, they are a light and dark attribute. We only have one of the light ones at the moment, so who knows? Maybe they'll add a bunch of other ones in the future. If they happen to get ones that require like waters and other things, I feel like this deck could get even better, although it might not happen because the Cursed Shadow Snare would be even crazier because you'd be like, oh, I can now target anything. So I feel like the only downside to the Shadow Snare is it doesn't work against every deck. Like, it basically works against anything that's light and dark, which is actually pretty good, but this is really where the deck shines. But nonetheless, Armageddon Knight, Mathematician just helps speed up the deck, but unfortunately you won't be able to set that turn, so you can kind of argue that it's not that good. But hey, maybe if you want to play double summon, you can definitely do that. Next up, we have Dark World Dealings. Pretty self-explanatory. This is not going to be a cost. So, you know, whenever they sent to the graveyard, whether it be Shadow Dragon, the Lizard, you all get, you know, pluses. So that's where Dark World Dealings really shines through. But the one thing I've never really liked personally with Dark World Dealings is it lets your opponent cycle through cards as well. So your opponent can be like, oh, you know what? I don't need certain cards in my hand right now. I can just go ahead and get rid of them, and then it kind of speeds up their deck as well. Next up, we have Battle Fusion, because I felt like the only downside with the Midrash over here is that you know, some decks only need one summon. They only really need that one special summon. Like, for example, heroes, they only need to summon that one you know, E-hero. They only need to go Miracle Fusion, then bam, they can get over Midrash. Because Midrash has the effect where your opponent can only special summon once per turn. Well, both players can only special summon once per turn. But they might be able to run over that, whether it be with something with like I don't know, what are they called? The Malefics. That could be something that runs over you know, your Midrash. Because this card is, it's so good if you can get it out, especially you just like, oh, I use the cards from my main deck, and if you can run over it, it's pretty good. So going back to Battle Fusion, so what this card actually does is it's a quick play coming out in the Dragon Legend set, and when an attack is declared involving a fusion monster you control an opponent's monster, your monster gains attack equal to the attack of the opponent's monster until the end of damage step. So basically a honest, not necessarily as good as honest, because, you know, hand traps are always better, in my opinion, than having things that can potentially get MST'd, because unfortunately MST can't stop honest, but you can only activate one Battle Fusion per turn, and it has to be when your opponent actually attacks, so it can't be, you know, you can't chain it, essentially, otherwise this card would be even better. But nonetheless, it's just another support card that will work really well with the deck, because I feel like this card is really where the deck will shine. I feel like if you can make this against certain decks, I mean, what would Fire Fist do? The Fire Fist would be pretty upset about this. I know Fire Fist have Tensu, but they'd have to normal summon, because, you know, obviously you might think, oh, Tanky Bear pop, but it can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So it would come down to them going for normal summon, Tensu, get that additional normal summon, and then bam, 101 is always there to wreck someone's day. But this card's still pretty good. I feel like there are so many decks, like, imagine what would you do if you're playing the Hermetic Rulers? Like, what do? Like, you have to special summon more than once to actually do anything in that deck, other than, of course, getting out, you know, a big monster like, you know, the Dragon Rulers. But if you don't have that setup, you'd have to go kind of minus. You might have to just activate your Dragon Shrine and start banishing stuff really early on. And if your opponent activates, you know, one trap card or something like that, you don't have any more plays. That's it. You got your one special summon, and you're gonna have to just end your turn. But yeah, really feel like this deck has a lot of potential. But if you guys know what would combo with this deck that I haven't mentioned, I felt like Dark World Dealings is probably one of their best cards that's not necessarily for them, but it definitely does work with them. But like I said, it's not out in DevPro yet, but I will be doing a bunch of duels with this archetype, because it really feels like there's so many things going on for this deck. It has card effects when they're flipped, and there's other effects when they're sent to the graveyard, and it also maintains this kind of stun ability and this ability to kind of speed up the deck, and have a lot of different ways to play. Unfortunately, I think Ophion probably ruined this deck, but there is also those cards where you can set, and there's one where you can return, but, you know, every time you get rid of the Ophion, there's always another one waiting around the corner, just like how 101 ruins my day. But anyways, like I said, let me know what combos you guys have with this deck, or what other cards that would work well with this deck. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. Azneyes signing out.